Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'll just allow just a couple of seconds for people to join and be allowed into the webinar. So I'd like to welcome you to our third webinar this morning. This one is titled Hiring Your First Apprentice and What You Need to Know. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Leah Bryan. I'm the Apprenticeship Advisor at Oxfordshire Skills. I would like to introduce my colleague, Nikki Cooper, who also is an Apprenticeship Advisor working alongside me. Today's webinar is a panel discussion, and for this reason, cameras and mics will be off and the session will be recorded. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Oxfordshire for those of you that aren't familiar with us and our social contract programme. Can I have the next slide, please? So Oxfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership, known as Oxfordshire, that's who we are. Our role is to champion Oxfordshire's economic potential, acting as a catalyst and convener to drive a dynamic, substantial and growing economy. If you'd like to find out more, do scan on the QR code that you can see there, and that will take you directly to our website. Next slide. So last spring, we set up the social contract programme. This was a grant that had come through from the Community Outbreak Management Fund, directly from government, that went to Oxfordshire County Council to pay for this project. What we wanted to do was address all of those impacts relating to the COVID-19 pandemic and how we could increase the number of apprenticeship opportunities across our region. We have 4 key target groups that we are hoping to introduce and get into apprenticeship. So those young people that are classed as NEET, so not in education, employment or training, are ethnic minority communities, those that are seen as being furthest away from the labour market, so potentially those that were shielding through the pandemic, and those that have been long-term unemployed. And we're also looking at the over 50s to give them opportunities to reskill and upskill. If I could go to the next slide, please. So today's session is going to inform you about what the benefits are to taking on an apprentice and potentially your first apprentice. So we know that by taking on apprentices, you can have a more inclusive and diverse workforce. It improves your talent pipeline. It can make you an employer of choice because people know that you offer those apprenticeship opportunities. It enables a mentoring and supportive culture and enables some of your current employees to get involved with mentoring and working with apprentices. It brings in new skills to your organisation, and it's proven to increase innovation and productivity. It also brings in fresh ideas and perspectives and can increase the motivation and commitment of your workforce. I've got some apprenticeship facts that I'd like to share with you today. So currently there are 829 apprenticeship standards ranging from level 2 right through to level 7. So apprenticeships start at level 2, which is equivalent to GCSEs, and go right up to level 7 to a master's degree. From September this year, you will actually be able to do an apprenticeship as a doctor, taking you all the way through those levels and taking 6 years to complete. You can be any age, 16 or above, to complete an apprenticeship. It's not just for the under 18s. The Apprentice Levy survey found that 85% of apprenticeships stay in employment, with 64% of those apprentices staying with their same employer. I've done a search this morning, so within 30 miles of Oxford, there are currently 607 live apprenticeship opportunities. So we know that apprenticeships are growing across our region, which is great to see. Can I have the next slide, please? So I'd now like to hand over to my colleague Nikki, who will introduce our guest panel for today's session. Thanks, over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Leah. So yes, we can see that there are many benefits for hiring an apprentice, but what we'd like to do now is to get into the nitty-gritty of actually how we go about hiring that apprentice. And with us today, we're really delighted to welcome Zoe Sprigings and also Abi Wilson. So just to start, I know it gave you their job title and company on the screen, but just to provide a little context for the audience, it'd be great if I could ask each of you to give a little overview about your business, the size of your business, and also importantly, kind of when looking at your workforce development needs, what made you consider hiring an apprentice? And if we go to Zoe first, that would be lovely. Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, Nikki. So yeah, I'm Zoe, I'm Chief Exec at Oxfordshire Community Foundation. And for those of you who don't know us, we're a charity and our mission is to really encourage effective philanthropy in Oxfordshire so that it supports thriving communities. What that means is we handle funds for wealthy individuals, businesses and local services and public bodies and channel it towards the smallest organisations in Oxfordshire, whether that's providing refugees with support, whether it's helping young children with reading, you name it. If there's a grassroots charity doing it, then we want to support. We're small, there's 8 of us, including our apprentice. And when we were thinking about whether to hire an apprentice, I think there were 2 reasons. One, because we're all about Oxfordshire community, we really want to make sure that every penny we spend, it's not just about the money that we give in grants to organisations, and we give around £2 million a year. It's about even the money that we spend on our staff. We want to be sure that that's really investing in Oxfordshire as a place to live. And we know that it's an economy that needs to be more inclusive, and we want to play our part in that. So we saw hiring an apprentice as a great way to do that. But also commercially, it really made sense, because what we wanted was to increase the donor care that we provide, because for us, looking after the people who really generously give us money to distribute is really important, and we want to encourage more people to give money. So that's a fundraising role. But our office is based in Oxford. There's 44 Oxford colleges. They all have their own fundraising teams, and they pay better than we do as a charity, not to mention other commercial fundraisers and business development. So we needed to make this hire, but we couldn't really afford it. And we're also a living wage employer, so we knew we'd pay over £20,000, but that's still not really competitive. But by making it an apprenticeship, we could say there's the salary of 20,000, but also there's an £8,000 investment in your education, and you're going to have a qualification at the end of it. And then really wonderfully, Oxford University transferred their levy over to us, and that also helped with sort of brand partnership as well. So yeah, it was an easy decision for our board.
That's lovely. Thanks, Zoe. And Abi, same question, really. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me to join this panel today. So I'm Abi, I'm the Human Resource Manager for Zircotec. Zircotec is a business in Abingdon. We currently employ 56 staff, so very small, but not quite as small as Zoe's charity. We're an engineering, research and development business providing heat management solutions predominantly for the automotive industry, but we do have links with aerospace, nuclear industry. We're growing rapidly, but nobody knows who we are. So recruiting apprentices, firstly, really echoing everything that Zoe said, we do currently have 3 apprentices, 2 in our metal fabrication workshop, and 1 who joined us as a factory worker and is now currently studying level 6 degree level at Apprenticeship. So that's in engineering. So that's, you know, really successful. For us, we certainly want to give back to the local community. And also, you know, with all the challenges, the recruitment landscape at the moment, for me, apprenticeships really help us to bridge that gap or fill that gap. And we're also able, because we're quite niche with what we do, we're able to develop those individuals with those bespoke skill sets as well. And our training providers are able to be quite flexible within the standards too. So it's for me, it's an absolute win-win. It's win for the business, from a CSR point of view, from a commercial economic point of view for us and our funding. We currently going through tapping into the apprenticeship levy as well. So of course the board buy into that as well, because they see it as free money. And we have real success stories. Our current apprentices are actually mentors to new starters that tend to be a lot older and have different skill sets, but because they've excelled through their learning and development, they are actually in a position where they mentor and train new employees that we take on outside of the apprenticeship. So it's actually developed those individuals in their life skills and personal skills too. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And just so thinking about kind of the apprentices that when you were taking them on, was it easy? We know there's various different stages to kind of go through before your apprentice starts within the business. Was it easy to find the right apprenticeship that matched kind of the skills that you were looking to bring in within the business, or indeed upskill within the business? That's specifically for Abi. And also to find the right training provider. Was it easy to do that, or?
So it's, I mean, initially, I'm going to be completely honest, I felt a little bit daunted and overwhelmed. Where do I go to find the information? But of course, there's good old Google, which I used initially, and obviously there's the government apprenticeship website, which I found easy to navigate actually. And then, you know, LinkedIn as well. So it's all social media really, and finding, you know, Oxlep. So it's been incredibly easy because there is lots of support out there to guide you through the process. And, you know, Leah's been amazing and fantastic, especially around looking for potential training providers. And once I was shown, then I can just, you know, research that myself now. So it is very procedural, but for me, not overly bureaucratic. And the steps within the procedure of onboarding an apprentice from start to finish are very clearly defined, but are actually quite simple.
Oh, that's good to hear. And Zoe, when you were looking at kind of providers for your apprentice, were there many providers that delivered the fundraising apprenticeship? Did you speak to many of them beforehand?
Yeah, it was so knowing which qualification to go for, which apprenticeship, was pretty easy because there's only one. There's the fundraising level 3, I think. So that narrowed that down. And then I'm pretty sure it was Leah who told me that there was the government website where you could find all the providers, and you can put in your postcode and find the ones. I would have really liked one, I think, that was in person, but that seems to have faded away. And to be honest, it does mean that you can look all over the country and it's pretty flexible. So there were quite a few. I feel like there were about 15, and it was really interesting looking at the different ones. So there was one that was run by a social enterprise up in near Newcastle, which looked really good, but it was going to take, I think, 21 months, and you can do it in 18 months. And we just didn't want one that lasted longer than it really had to. And then there were a few which, to be honest, did look a bit like providers who decided, okay, this will be a way of making some money, and the quality didn't look amazing. So the ones that I was impressed by were where they'd published their courses on the website, because I thought, you know, that's quite transparent. And it wasn't, I didn't read through a whole curriculum, but I think they had a one-pager that showed the 10 different modules for fundraising, and I thought that looks really sensible. And actually, our head of fundraising said, you know, I'm quite tempted to go on this myself because it looks, you know, really good training. And so we went with one called JGA, which is a commercial provider, I think based in Uxbridge or Slough. And what we liked about them was that, as well as showing the course, they actually said they do one-to-one sort of dedicated sessions with the candidates. They've got a particular focus on equity, diversity and inclusion, and they sort of called that out as a thing. And they also said that they had a focus on neurodiversity and sort of were aware of that. And so we just thought that this looks like it'll be a really good training experience. And they offered a free session where you could just book 15 minutes in to chat with them. So I did, was really impressed by them. And then the money transfer bit was really easy. I mean, considering £8,000 is quite a lot. And Oxford University was super helpful. I had a sort of online session with them for 30 minutes where they just showed on the website the buttons that I had to click, because that's not super intuitive, but I think that's probably true for any government website. It's not always not always sort of common sense, I think. But I should be careful what I say. My husband works in apprenticeships for the government, so but this has been quite useful feedback, telling him what works and what is sometimes a bit confusing for a small organization.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, you know, taking away from that, then it's really important to look at who the provider is for the apprenticeships that you want to run within your business, and make sure that it's a provider, you know, do your kind of research and due diligence and make sure that it's a provider that works for you as an organization and that you're happy with, you say. And then I think, obviously, yes, so the kind of the nuts and bolts, kind of the nitty gritty of how you set yourselves up to be able to kind of hire an apprentice and manage those funds. We know you need a digital apprenticeship service account. So Abi, was yours already set up as there were existing apprentices in the business?
Yeah, it was, but it was something I still had to learn about. So again, you know, website was reasonably useful. The apprenticeship portal I find really easy and intuitive. So it was set up, and I've sort of self-taught and stuff. But again, there are, you know, there are yourselves that I can reach out to. And to pick up on Zoe's point, if you establish the right partnership with the training providers, actually they are really, really helpful. And I've been very lucky, again, with Leah's guidance and sort of going through a due diligence process like Zoe did. Training providers we're now partnering with are really, really helpful. And you know, they either take on some of that element or certainly show me how to do. So yeah, it's easy.
That's really great to hear that there's lots of support.
I was just going to add on to that, just that, I mean, in one way, hiring an apprentice is just like hiring any member of staff. You write a job description, we published it in our normal ways, but it just really helped. I think Leah, kindly reviewed the job description. Our training provider also reviewed it, because we were saying, are we asking for the right level of things? Is this appropriate? And they also put it out on their social media channels as well. So in a way, it was like getting extra help with a normal hire. It just then had a few more sort of boxes to tick, but that felt worth it to get the £8,000 as well, to be honest.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that was kind of was going on to my kind of the next thing really when you're recruiting for an apprentice. Do you do anything different, or is it like you say, you're actually, the recruitment process is the same as hiring any employee? It's just the kind of the technical, the nitty-gritty things you need to do in the background to make sure that the apprenticeship is part of that. Abby,
Well,
do you
for
do
us-
anything different? Or Zoe, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for us, I asked our apprentice actually how she found us, and it was through LinkedIn. She had a sort of a search set up. We tried lots. It wasn't that easy, to be honest, but I don't think that was about it being an apprentice. I think it was about offering a salary that's at the lower age, sort of end of the scale in Oxford, which is one of the most expensive places to live in the UK. So I think that was partly why, with advice from Leah and also talking to Oxford University, which is a massive employer of apprentices, they said if you advertise at 20,000, then you should get applicants. But if you go below it, then it could be challenging. And we got, I think, about sort of 10 to 15 applicants, and then 3 to 5 were good enough to bring to interview. And then we had a couple of really great finalists. And had a really fantastic first choice. So it was challenging, but only in the sense that the Oxfordshire jobs market is challenging. But I don't know if Abby, whether you find that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very informal, slick interview process, full stop, here at Zircotec, because we find that that's how it works. So it's conversational. So yes, the challenges are getting the applicants, the candidates to apply, actually. So we use lots of different media, but it's the same media that we use for our employees. So the process is exactly the same as employing a non-apprentice, and it's just a one-stage interview. It's just what it does bear in mind is obviously what the role is. So the questions are pitched, there's a factory tour, it's just an interactive interview. And as I say, it just replicates how we interview all staff, full stop.
That's brilliant. And I know I could talk to you both all day, but I want to open up the floor for wider questions. But before I do, really, 2 things I want to touch on. One is the kind of the transfer of funds, which you've both spoken about. So obviously, being a non-levy paying employers yourself, obviously you receive the transfer of funds from a larger organisation, which saves you from having to pay that kind of 5%. Was that, so you said it was an easy kind of an easy process. Was it an easy process, and kind of the benefit to the business really of not having to pay that amount? Did that make a difference?
I mean, I would also say it was really easy to find the levy. You go on the website and you say, I'm looking for people who transfer levies, and like this whole sort of supermarket of options opens up. And we were looking, and to be honest, for us actually having Oxford University transfer over, that was helpful in itself. We're doing a media story with them. We're quite a small organisation, so having a chance to raise our profile and in partnership with the university, we really appreciate that, and I think they appreciate it because they want to show how they're investing in the local community. So it was really easy to find, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. And Abby, how about from Zircotec? You mentioned obviously that kind of the senior leadership team were happy, obviously, that that you had kind of funds that didn't need to go to pay for the apprenticeship, so then maybe they were kept within the businesses. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it's yes, just it just benefits everybody. It really is a win-win solution to a lot of issues businesses are finding in the current landscape.
And then one final question just before we open up to the audience. So Abby, I'll go to you first. If you could give one piece of advice to a business that is looking to hire an apprentice, either bringing a new employee in as an apprentice or using an apprenticeship to upskill a current member of staff, what would it be?
Absolutely go for it. Don't think twice, don't fear it, because there is a massive amount of support out there. So just do it.
That's great, thank you. And Zoe, how about you? Same?
Yeah, I'd say just see it like a normal hire, to be honest, because we've had a separate experience with hiring in a competitive area where we've also made commitments to training for, actually just as of the budget this year, we've committed to investing in training for all our staff, because I think that's something you just have to do as a good employer now in a really competitive environment. So just see this as a normal hire with maybe a little bit more paperwork, but also you're either using your own levy that you've already paid or you're getting someone else's for it. So that's the bonus.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you both very much. I'd just like to now open up. We've got time for a few questions from the audience, if there's any in the chat.
Thank you, everybody. We have had a couple in. I think some of them you've answered in your discussion. Well, one quick question about the levy. So you've mentioned about the transfer of funds. What does that pay for in terms of the apprenticeship and setting one up?
Shall I answer that one or? Yeah, so in terms of the levy transfer, so the funds that are transferred by a large employer pay for 100% of the apprenticeship training costs.
Thank you, Nikki. So it doesn't cover equipment or anything else you may need to fund?
No, it doesn't cover equipment, and it doesn't cover the salary costs of the employer. But so the training costs and endpoint assessment of that apprenticeship are covered.
Great, thank you, Nikki. Another quick question about the training. So how does that work in terms of the time that the apprentice spends? So do they go one day a week to college, or how does that work in terms of the workload?
I think it depends on the provider. So I think Zoe mentioned before that the provider that delivers their apprenticeship is done remotely. So the apprentice has to do 6 hours a week kind of off the job learning, but obviously that may be different. Abi, with your apprentices, are they out one day a week?
Yeah, it depends on the standard and the level. So currently our level 3 apprentices and the level 3 apprentices that we're taking on in engineering will spend 1 day per week at the training providers. The HR apprentice is remote. So yeah, and there's definitely a big move towards remote training now.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think we've just got a minute or two left now. So I think you've answered most of the other questions. Leah, I think you were just going to sum up with where people could find out more if they're interested, and also perhaps mention how they can access that website that Zoe talked about for finding the levy transfer.
Yeah, so I think it was Abi that said that when you're taking on an apprentice, it feels like you've got a kind of set of procedures to go through. So this just simplifies what you need to do, but Nikki and myself can take you through each step of this process. So you would go right through from identifying what is the role that you want the apprenticeship for and what is the standard that best suits that. Setting up your digital apprenticeship service account, Nikki and I will gladly help. The funding, the advertising, the salary costs, like Zoe said, your interviewing. And then once you've selected your apprentice, there are some agreements that need to be signed and completed. And then we can also offer that support during the process of your apprentice being with you as well. So we help you go right from the start, right through to completion. In terms of accessing the levy, as Zoe said, there is a government website where you can search for funding opportunities and you can apply yourself. You do need to have that digital apprenticeship service account set up in order to do that, or come to myself and Nikki. So we're working with many levy payers across Oxfordshire and outside of the region that have already committed to pledging. So once we understand your needs, we can match you up with those companies as well. And then just taking us on to our final slide. So as I mentioned, all the things that Nikki and myself can help and support with, so identifying those opportunities for apprenticeships, guiding you to find the right standard and the training provider that delivers that, funding advice, setting up your digital apprenticeship service accounts. We can support you with recruitment advice and that ongoing journey for the apprenticeship. If you'd like to find out more, again, please do use the QR code that will take you to our website. We've also included our business support tool here. So if you are a small business and you want to find out more about how Oxlet Business can support you, I would suggest that you look there as well. Many thanks for joining us all today. Thank you to Abi and Zoe. We really do appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.